Welcome to the Federalist Radio Hour. I'm Emily Jashinsky, culture editor here at The Federalist. As always, you can email the show at radio@thefederalist.com. We're coming to you today from Washington, D.C., where I'm joined by my colleague, Federalist senior editor, Christopher Bedford. Chris, thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we're going to break down a little bit of the DNC, but we also want to offer some sort of preview of what we think is going to come from the RNC, which Political Playbook has said will have a very difficult time beating what we saw at the DNC, which I find laughable because I don't think what they were able to come up with, I think it's fine. We've talked about this on some of our YouTube live streams. But I think that, it's fine that they have this sort of like safe thing going on. It wasn't like terrible, and for them I think that's good, right? Like they didn't have any terrible blunders, so they should be happy that they came across as like the safe choice, right? Like
if I am given in charge of a campaign 8 hours, 4 to 8 hours depending on the cable station, of primetime television advertising, and my takeaway is no major blunders, you can execute me.
Well, but it was the first virtual convention, so it's a little bit of an experiment.
I mean, how many people in America thought about why they were doing a completely virtual convention? I mean, we're going back to work. It's not just essential workers anymore. Mm-hmm. Across most of the country, restaurants and bars are open. People are going out. People are at least hanging out with neighbors and family.
Yeah.
And rapid testing is expensive and difficult to obtain, but it's available at, say, the White House. You can't go into the White House at all for an appointment, press corps, for work without a test that takes about 15 minutes. And there are stories about socialites in L.A., which the Democrats know, Hollywood liberals using these tests to have access to their parties. So why the hell couldn't Joe Biden hug Kamala Harris? What, is he delicate? Is he made of glass? Will he shatter? Will he blow away like sand in the wind? I mean, is he a hologram? It's unbelievable that they made people like, okay, they've only had a couple hundred people in that parking lot hitting their horns and putting their blinkers on. It's like some kind of teeny bop concert. Could they not have tested them?
No, I mean, I think it looked ridiculous. But this gets into what the RNC can do better, which Playbook thinks is impossible. Playbook thinks why aren't you wearing a mask?
Well, I'm not alone in the hallway right now. Also, I'm a deeply unsafe person.
So Playbook thinks it's going to be just impossible that the DNC set a very high bar, which I think is not borne out at all by the ratings, because the ratings after that first night went down. And I do think, of course, they sort of got their sea legs and they figured out how to do a virtual.
Biden did give a good speech. That was it. John Legend gave good music. The music went from weird gender bending and bizarre to great music. Like John Legend in Common with the gospel choir was
fantastic,
phenomenal. It's worth looking it up live.
And they did a really good job of figuring out how to have a compelling musical performance without an audience. Some of the other musical performances were not like that one. Common and John
the main girl, crooning.
She just keeps picking on Maggie Rogers. I love Maggie Rogers.
It's a good song for a commercial about animal abuse. I don't know if it's a good song for a pep rally.
So I saw Maggie Rogers in D.C. the day that Kavanaugh was confirmed, and I'm not kidding. I still have videos of this. They projected a picture of Christine Blasey Ford taking the oath behind Maggie Rogers as she sang a song called Back in My Body.
So whatever happened to her? She didn't have a prime speaking slot at the DNC.
I don't think they really want to.
I understand that. I don't think she would want to either. I think that whole experience was rather traumatic for everyone involved.
Yeah. But anyway, Playbook thinks that this is going to be really hard for Republicans to beat. I think that's completely laughable. I think they, like I said, that first night, it got better after that. But at the same time, it was like a
almost
telethon.
Every night was bad. I mean, there were some very good moments in the last one. It was a victim of its own directing. Their whole thing about Joe Biden's personality is how much he has suffered. Now since every one of us, at least if we've lived long enough, have suffering in our lives, suffering close to us. That's not it can't be the main driver. And if it is the main driver for pep rally, it has to be balanced out by crowds and cheering and applause and streamers and balloons. You can't have nights that end so depressingly.
Yeah.
So often. And they went from his family was killed, horrible thing that happened, to he met Jill, which is a nice way to do that. But then every one of his introductions was about loss and death and not rising up. Now you can take those. The DNC worked very hard to capture our emotions, they captured them a few times, like with that the video about John Lewis, the documentary about his life, and then they go right into the John Legend Gospel Choir Common song, which has got it's a very liberal activist message, but it didn't fall into the trap of most of that music by sounding bad. It sounded great and had a godly kind of crusader gospel message about standing up for the people and standing up for justice. That was a wonderful moment. And then they go back to Julia Louis-Dreyfus, however you say her name, and she just ruins it. She just goes, "Whoa, that was really great. Whoa." What she's calling Mika Ponce? Like her joke was
Mika
that
Ponce.
the Americans should not know how to pronounce Michael, but should know how to pronounce Kamala.
Yeah, right.
Give me a break.
No, so
It's just squandered moments like that the whole way through.
But I do want to make a point, which is, first of all, I love Julia Louis-Dreyfus, but her performance last night was so cringy, and the joke writing was so bad. There were a couple of really good jokes, but I do have to say, again, we've talked about this on our YouTube live streams, this was a convention for boomers, and so we're younger people like us, although you're not really that young anymore.
No,
we're younger people like
us.
us.
You people.
You're a millennial, get over it. Where younger people like us might cringe at the sort of like Orange Man bad Putin jokes. For boomers, like I think for liberal boomers that works, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think liberal boomers who like watch a lot of Rachel Maddow or find like the Putin Trump Facebook memes, whatever it is,
they might not be tired of it, and that's who's watching because it's CNN and MSNBC have been leading the ratings. I haven't seen last night's ratings yet, Thursday night's ratings yet, but that's who's watching. Yeah,
and so no, the RNC isn't going to have a parade of Hollywood actresses to host the convention every night. You're not going to have Kerry Washington and Tracee Ellis Ross and Eva Longoria.
Is that who that was? Well, who was that person on?
Which one?
On Tuesday night.
Tuesday night was Tracee Ellis Ross.
Yeah, actually, I guess I don't watch enough movies.
Clearly.
I don't recognize any of these people except for
called
Seinfeld actress and then Veep.
Yeah. But she's on a show called Blackish.
That's top of my Netflix list.
Anyway, so no, the RNC is not going to have that like Hollywood moderating element, but I don't think it'll be particularly difficult for the RNC to beat what the DNC was able to do. I think that last night, as we've talked about, it congealed, right? Like I think finally it sort of like gelled that last night. They got it together. It was a fairly compelling show. It's still like Julia Louis-Dreyfus had some awkward moments. Humor wasn't amazing. They had some telethon moments, but like Biden gave a good speech that the media absolutely lost their minds over and called like groundbreaking, thought it was the most beautiful thing they had ever seen in politics, fawned over it, are still fawning over it, because he met the basic bar of giving a good convention speech.
He didn't fall down. He didn't lose his place.
No, but he gave a good speech.
It was a good speech, but I thought it was really interesting to see, and this is going to come across as insensitive, which I think I have to be. I've been watching Biden, and we've been watching Biden as a country for years and years and years and years, decades, and 8 years on the national stage, beyond the Senate. And I know he's got a stutter. He's talked about this. He's worked on this issue. We know he's got loss in his life. He's talked about this. It's impossible for the events he's been through not to define a man. But I was surprised last night to see the introduction, or Thursday night, to see the introduction of Joe Biden as this is a man whose son is dead and who has a stutter. That is not the way Joe Biden's been introduced previously. I know that some of those things have changed. And I really was curious about that stutter play-up because he's avoided that. When Mike Allen from Axios asked him about his stutter, explaining some of his mishaps on the campaign trail, he reacted angrily and denied it. Now they're embracing it, and I really thought that was an insurance policy against his speech. So when you're watching this man, if he appears to get lost, if he appears to lose his train of thought, which he almost always does, especially that late at night, then people will say, wow, it's a stutter. It's not cognitive decline, which we can all see. And he went out there, and Democrats were getting increasingly nervous, I feel, knowing that this was a hidden candidate who wouldn't come out of his house. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is going around the entire country giving speeches to live audiences, talking to reporters live every day. Joe Biden can't even hug Kamala Harris. I think that was the whole thing was like, listen, this guy's alive. He's still might be made of dust or a hologram, but he can deliver a speech with emotion and not drift off into ether in front of our very eyes. And it was a good speech. And that was the main thing that they brought away from this. And all these Democrats, these people over at Playbook who on day one were like, oh my gosh, that was horrible. And on day two, we're starting to get the memo.
Yeah.
You notice this a lot with the media. They'll be like, oh my gosh, that was really bad. And then somebody will, like their DNC will blow up their email inbox like, no, it wasn't. Here's what it was. And they're like, you know what? I'll rewrite every one of my headlines.
Yeah, right.
We saw this after 2016. We saw this after Monday. They have to get their messaging in order.
They need to get the memo.
They're a bunch of cowardly, they scatter. It's like Bull Run every time.
Yep.
Every time something happens, they just run into the fields. And they have the memo now. Like, all right, here's the bugle charge. Go back.
Well, no, it actually is what happened, because as the convention went on, yeah, it got better. But again, it wasn't like really compelling television. It certainly wasn't the best they could do with the resources that they had and with all of the time they had to plan a convention virtually, which you've mentioned. They knew long before Republicans that they were going virtual.
Yeah, Republicans have a good opportunity to screw this up, knowing disorganization in like 2 weeks of planning.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think... and the Democrats incorporated this as the week went on more and more. They incorporated more like live content, and I think that's really important. I think the Republicans, which are planning like fireworks on the mall and whatever else,
that's going to be so awesome.
You need the element of unpredictability to make compelling television. Otherwise, you're watching an ad, right?
And even though it's very unlikely that something as well choreographed as a convention will have something go wrong, there is that excitement. It's live. Like there could be something could go wrong.
Yeah.
And something could go great. And you can't get viral moments out of acting. You can't get viral moments out of pre-taped things. You need live. You need applause. You need reactions. And that is sort of aside. And you wrote something interesting about the moderate aspects being able to get away with the moderation that we saw. I mean, it was a real quick journey back to the public relations political messaging center of the Democratic Party, what Joe Biden ran on in the primary, won on, and then amazingly has gone left. This was a full retreat back to America the beautiful, America the great, the America of the foundings, colorblind America, not racially segregated America like the left has been pushing. And you think a lot of that was to do with the activists?
Well, yeah, I think so. It felt like we were watching the 2004 and 2008 convention, which is when you were middle-aged. And I mean that in terms of there was this sort of like full-throated embrace and focus on patriotism. And Joe Biden was depicted as a patriot, and the Democrats were depicted as the true patriots. The only reason they were able to get away with a lot of this stuff is because they didn't have the optics of dissent and booing that would have occurred at a live convention had they played the national anthem.
The God-booing stuff that they literally have done at conventions past.
Right, so when a pastor comes and prays in Jesus' name, I don't know how that's going to fly when you have a live audience of Democratic delegates and activists. And when they play the national anthem, I absolutely guarantee you if they had had a live DNC, there would have been kneeling, and the network cameras would have caught that. And so, yeah, I think they were able to get away with targeting this really clearly at those Rust Belt, boomer swing voters, Obama-Trump voters, making them into Obama-Trump-Biden voters because they didn't have the live element. They were able to really embrace this notion that the Democrats are the true patriots. And when you mentioned Joe Biden's stutter and the video that they played of the young boy, which was sweet.
It's a really sweet video. It's a sweet story.
It's always uncomfortable.
Just never defined him before.
Well, it's always uncomfortable to watch, I think, political parties use children. I don't like that. I would understand that video, like, not at a convention. I find it uncomfortable at a convention. But at the same time, I think part of that is also, like, this convention was very focused on Joe Biden's character. So they're saying Democrats are the safe choice, Democrats are the true patriots, and Joe Biden is a decent man. And they're trying to really draw a contrast. I think they had a successful messaging campaign over the course of the convention because the media was eager to help them with that. But this is not a Democratic Party that's acceptable to its base. It is not a Democratic Party that will be acceptable to the majority of its voters in 10 years when, they really have to cater to aging millennials. So this is like what they're trying to do is put up this charade of the Democratic Party being centrists. And it's not true. It may be true of Joe Biden, He's not necessarily a centrist, but he may sort of in tone be willing to embrace.
It's exaggerated.
It's sad that we have to refer to patriotism as centrism, but in the age of the 1619 Project, we actually do. So I think, what then do you think the Republican Party's messaging is going to be? We've heard some, I think, early previews of it from the president's speeches this week during the DNC. We've heard that their focus is going to be on the forgotten men and women of America. What do you think that's going to look like?
So there's one thing two things to add on to what we were just talking about before I jump into the GOP, is the mention of Jesus Christ sure disappeared by the last night when we had that fake Catholic nun in plain clothes praying to "Oh great divine spirit" as if she was, a white reenactor doing Pocahontas. Where is the Inquisition when you need it, people?
Although they did pray in Jesus' name the first night.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Night one.
Yes.
Jesus, one mention, 4 nights. Very good. And two, I actually think by night 4, this was not an aberration. This was not an attempt to sneak past the activist base, because the base itself is not as insane as the activist base is.
Yeah,
not as insane as Nancy Pelosi is, literally bowing to Black Lives Matter.
Right.
I think that the campaign has decided that, all right, well, we have a black woman as the VP, so you can shut up now, leftists, and we're going to go back to doing exactly what we want to.
Yeah.
We're going to win this election, all right? Are you going to attack us? Are you going to attack us? Come on. Kamala, shut up. And I think that's what they're going to do now. And it's to see if they get away with it, because 4 nights will not undo weeks and weeks and weeks of pivoting to the left, unless they stick with it. And usually conventions are a preview of exactly what they'll run on.
It was light on policy.
Of course it is. You don't want policy in a convention. You want you want a vessel of good character for people to pour their hopes and dreams and aspirations into, and everyone looks at Joe Biden and they see, that's who I want to represent me in the thing that I care about. And it could be 50 different things.
Well, if they really believed what they constantly say, they would run on policy, because they say that it's popular in the middle of the country. Like, remember when Randy Bryce ran?
John Kerry did that.
Yeah.
You need like a John F. Kennedy or Barack Obama who's like, my policy is your dreams.
And isn't it amazing that Joe Biden is now their Barack Obama? It's sort of like you can project your dreams for the country onto Joe Biden.
Go washing his car in the driveway.
But how do you think this is going to play out at the RNC when they're talking about the forgotten men and women of America? I think we heard notes of American carnage from President Trump in his speeches this week. What do you think it's actually going to look like at the RNC?
I think, I've been seriously worried on behalf of the Republicans, thinking, well, you guys don't have enough time. The Democrats have had all this time. But the Democrats so fiercely under-delivered that I think they've got a huge opening here, despite what, the deadheads at Playbook think. The live audience alone is a major, major step. Mm-hmm. You can't have viral moments without a live audience.
Yeah.
I don't know how big those are going to be, but I know the invitations have started to go out. The press may actually be allowed to be near them, and they're choosing national symbols, not empty convention centers in Wilmington, to broadcast this to. Fort McHenry, the home of Star Spangled Banner, is an absolutely wonderful place for Mike Pence to deliver a speech out in Baltimore. The president talking from the South Lawn, at least as is prepared, the permitting applications from the RNC for fireworks means that there will be people. It also means, and this is good for the Republicans, after a week of the Democrats pretending they're not insane, we're going to see their activists in the streets of Washington, D.C. protesting fireworks, protesting the flag, protesting Fort McHenry, protesting and screaming. And, if we're unlucky, maybe they'll light some of our neighbors' cars on fire. They like to do that. It's very cold in D.C. this time of year. I think that those things combined, if done well, will soar. I'm not sure how much time they even have to be able to do this, but I don't think 8 hours is. I don't think anyone has enough material to actually fill 8 hours without a convention. And the last hours of each night were typically better. Every single night of the DNC would have been better had it been compacted into an hour.
Yeah.
And I think the Republican will be the exact same. I'm interested to see what they do, and I think the introduction of people, national symbols, and excitement outside of your car without a mask on is going to go a long way.
Well, if they're using backdrops that sort of bring natural beauty and natural, patriotism to the actual aesthetic, so if they're at Fort McHenry, if they're at the White House, if they're in Washington, D.C., that's a built-in benefit, absolutely. I'm just really curious as to what their messaging is going to be, because we know that they're having people like Nick Sandmann, the Covington Catholic student who successfully sued CNN for defaming him.
Fake news. Like, literally child-attacking fake news with fake Indian activists on the steps of attacking the seat of the Catholic Church in North America, applauded. I mean, guards had to stop them from entering the basilica to disrupt it with their pagan drums. It was insane.
The pagan drums. Who else? There's Sandman. There's another speaker like that. That's interesting.
I've gone more through the themes than the speakers so far, since I've just finished my last 3 a.m. night.
Yeah.
Covering the convention. But I know some of the themes are a little bit interesting in how hysterically corporate and redundant they are.
Mm-hmm. The St. Louis couple.
Yep, they're going to be there.
Yeah,
and there's a theme of opportunity one night. There's a theme of promise the other night. I'm not completely convinced that I could write 2 hours of show on opportunity and then 2 hours of show on promise. I would have liked to have blended those things, double spaced with wide margins.
Yeah.
It's going to be patriotism. It's going to be Net America. And we know for a fact that when he's not up there sparring with absolutely vacant idiots in the White House, which he loves to do with the press, he is capable of delivering lofty, soaring speeches like we saw at the convention, like we saw amazingly in Europe when speaking on the anniversary of World War II in Warsaw, like we've seen Normandy,
State of the Union.
The State of the Union. Like he can deliver a message, and he is only...
Mount Rushmore, we can't forget.
Mount Rushmore was unbelievable.
Yeah, that was his best
Ben made
speech.
me cover that on Independence Day, and it was great. I'm glad I did. Joe Biden is only 3 years older than Donald Trump, but despite his ability to get really angry about how Donald Trump hasn't forced the people of South Dakota to wear a freaking mask, which is insane, it's going to be, I think, wild how much younger looking Donald Trump is than Joe Biden.
Oh, he looks 10 years younger than Joe Biden.
I know a year can change things. I mean, you injure your back, you hit your head, you have massive cognitive decline. You will suddenly look older than you were just the year previously. But there's a huge canyon between Biden and Trump.
So, I mean, even though the Republicans have had less time to prepare for the virtual convention than the Democrats have, they do have one benefit, which is they have Donald Trump, who is the showman. Like, this is a man who actually came from the television industry. And so I'm curious to see if the RNC took more control over the production than President Trump did. I imagine President Trump is very involved in the aesthetics and the production of how this is going to look, because the RNC, I think, continues to not really understand the culture war, given the fact that they're having Sandman and the St. Louis couple. What is their name? The gun couple.
Yeah.
The McCloskeys.
Yeah. I was waiting for you to get it.
Yeah, it came. I'm not quite as old, so I'm not, like...
There's a lot of ideas up in this head.
Yeah, I imagine. That's what Joe Biden says. And so I think given the fact that they have some of these sort of like speakers that hint that it's going to be about the culture war, that's a good thing. But at the same time, like, I don't know, is this going to be like a Mitch McConnell convention or a Donald Trump convention?
It's going to be come on.
This is going to be a Donald Trump convention.
Were you there 4 years ago? Are you too young to have been at the 2016 convention?
I'm not too young, but I wasn't there.
You weren't there? Leonard Skinner, Kid Rock, Trump's friend named Barrick. Peter Thiel, like, screaming and yelling from the stage with his hands raised.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not even a public figure. He was riled up. Donald Trump's entrance to the convention hall was like the same entrance he used to the World Wrestling Federation, whatever it's called now, WWE.
Yeah.
When he had this shadow cast and he came out and he's like, and by the way, here's my very attractive daughter, and here's my very attractive wife. I am your new king. It's an unbelievable level of showmanship, and of course everyone cheers and went to the Kid Rock concert, and half of the people missed their flights the next day. The example of the RNC running this over Trump, though, I mean, that's classic. Trump is dictating at a very close level this convention, but even with presidential elections or conventions before this, It's very sad and also very funny to hear the stories of all the people who were involved with the planning, because you spend months and months and months meticulously planning everything. And then a bunch of peckerheads from the White House show up and are like, all of this is ruined. Get out of the room. You're not in charge.
Yeah.
And they run the show, and sometimes there are huge mistakes, which you get blamed for. It's very frustrating to run a convention because the White House is in charge.
Yeah.
And they're not really going to plan that much.
Well, yeah, and I think I do think the RNC continues to, like, get on the Trump train, and I don't mean the Trump train in terms of
the chairwoman is solidly on the Trump train.
Well, yeah, but I mean in terms of like understanding culture. Like if we go back, there have actually been stories. There's actually a pretty good story in the Daily Beast this week about some people that are close to the Trump campaign and were involved in the 15 and 16 campaign, saying like he is getting away from the populist message. All he's talking about are boaters and the capital gains tax.
Ooh, can there be a boat parade?
Yeah,
because the boat parade was, you have to watch this on Facebook, was so much better.
Can Steve Bannon be
did.
the leader of the boat parade?
Well, he was on the boat parade too, wasn't he?
I don't know, but he was arrested on a boat, so I think it's only natural to have Steve Bannon lead a boat parade.
I think so.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. But no, this is what I'm really curious to see next week, because when you have this sort of griping in the press that the president is getting away from his populist message, I do think that's what the RNC still struggles to, and I shouldn't just be singling out the RNC. I really, when I say that, mean the Republican establishment. I do think that's what they struggle still to understand, and like they sort of understand it when you see them like hyping things like Sandman and culture war issues, but at the same time, that also means that you can't just constantly rage that Joe Biden is a socialist. That's not what's going to do it.
Nobody cares anymore.
Well, no, because they had focus groups. I remember Ronna McDaniel told me about a year ago that they were focus grouping socialism, and it worked really well with white, educated suburban women, and being able to.
Who Donald Trump actually really needs.
Yeah, that was what was moving the needle. But that's not going to work with Joe Biden. And you cannot call Joe Biden a socialist. You can maybe say, like, and they continue to call him a Trojan horse because nobody believes it. Nobody believes it.
But it's totally true.
No, it is. But I'm saying, no, it completely is true that he's a Trojan horse for a far left cultural agenda. But even if Kamala Harris is the president, Kamala Harris is not going to pursue Medicare for all.
I mean, if you're watching this thing last night, you're watching this convention, you're watching it over the 4 days, God have mercy on your soul. It reminded so many conservatives of exactly why they hated the Obamas and why they never hated Joe Biden.
Yes, and this is what the media didn't understand in their fawning praise over President Obama was that, like,
the man is such a jerk.
We went from Barack Obama to Donald Trump for a reason. That's why Hillary Clinton didn't win in those states, and that's why they hemorrhaged Obama-Trump voters, because people were dissatisfied with the Obama recovery and the Obama economy, and even like
the constant Obama condescension to everyone on the planet who was less intelligent than him.
100%, and that's where like the media fawning over Obama shows how much they don't understand what produced Donald Trump, because Obama comes back onto the stage for freaking 20 minutes and they lose their minds about what a beautiful contrast he created with Donald Trump. This was objective, straight down the middle reporters, allegedly, and it wasn't just them. It was also, people like Ryan Leza, a columnist. But like, give me a break. Give me a break. They
Barack
don't
Obama
understand.
as Morgan Freeman as God. Thank goodness he's back.
He gave a good speech, but what they don't understand is that does
really?
not.
I thought this was really interesting about Obama, is that he gives these speeches that everyone comes away with saying that was wonderful, but can't repeat a single line. And then when he was actually without the audience, without the adulation, without the constant limelight that he craves, just like Trump does.
Yeah. In
an empty room, it was just canned liberal.
Yeah, it was.
Crap. It was just like Donald Trump, Orange Man, bad, us, good. And I remember thinking, man, without the crowds who think you're God, you're just another liberal.
Well, this is what I think does, like, actually Damon Linker had a great piece in The Week a couple of weeks ago about why Obama continues to get under conservative skin. And it's really because he talks down to average Americans and has this air of moral superiority. Now, I think President Obama is really smart, and he does have a good sense of...
Not as smart as he thinks he is.
What the messaging needs to be. But at the same time, I think it's still like when the press is losing their minds over this, they're not understanding that he actually really does rankle a lot of people in the middle of the country by speaking in these morally superior platitudes about the arc of justice and the Democratic Party, right? Like, I just don't think they realize that doesn't, like, it might be well written and flowery and inspirational to Beltway people, but it does hit a lot of people in the middle of the country as just obnoxious moral superiority.
I think you're right, and I think this is going to be interesting television, folks. The good news is you don't have to watch it if you don't have to, because we will at the Federalist. And we will be covering this from start to finish, this convention, bringing you live up-to-date coverage all next week, just like we have, all this coming week, just like we have during the DNC. And we hope to see you there. Until then, be lovers of freedom and anxious for the fray.